Hello, Philip back, the casual pilot, about to start this journey to be a pilot. I am very excited. I'm back here with Jake Robinson, my CFI. For you folks that don't know, CFI is an acronym for Certified Flight Instructor.
That's me.
I've been doing a little reading in private aviation and aviation in general. It's full of acronyms, and I think they make the lawyers and accountants look like amateurs with their acronyms because there are so many to learn and know what's going on. Anyway, this is the first video in the journey, and part of getting ready to be a private pilot is getting all the little bits and bytes and stuff that you need to become a pilot. So that's what Jake's got here for me today. We're going to spread it out, and he's going to show you some of the stuff. We're going old school, people. No computers allowed yet.
All right, so Philip, here's your flight kit.
Let's go.
All the stuff in this bag is the stuff you'll need throughout the process. All right, so got a bag full of all the stuff we need here.
All kind of goodies.
So first of all, and I already sent you the PDFs of all these, which are freely available from the FAA. That's a great resource, folks. But wow. These are the private pilot textbooks. So we have...
See there, folks? Just about half of those words are acronyms. I've actually gone through, I think I went through this one already on the PDFs, just kind of getting familiar with stuff to get a feel for it, except for the stuff that didn't pertain to anything we're going to do, like instruments and the heavy duty stuff. But all the stuff that kind of pertain to what we're going to be learning, I kind of have at least glanced at it one time through. So
perfect, perfect. So the books that we'll be using are this one, which is the Airplane Flying Handbook, which is the book from the FAA that details all of the actual flying of the airplane, takeoffs, landings, all that kind of stuff. And
there's lots of mathematical notations and equations and abbreviations in there that just made my brain go.
There's a few, but you know, I was never exactly in love with math either, and I do just fine. So.
I'm sure I'll be fine. It's just kind of overwhelming at first. This one I've been working on right now.
This next one is another book from the FAA that makes up the textbook set. This is the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. So this book has all the stuff that will be on the private pilot written exam, or knowledge test as they call it now, since it's actually done on a computer instead of on paper like they used to.
I think I saw a word that wasn't an acronym.
And then finally we have
ooh, weather.
The last book. That
we get to be a meteorologist too?
A little bit. You got to know a little bit of everything to be
awesome.
A pilot. So this is called Aviation Weather. It is another one of the FAA handbooks and manuals.
Get a little closer there.
So when we're done with this process, I think you'll have a lot better idea of what the TV weathermen are talking about on...
Yeah, my wife's a little bit of a weather junkie, so we've gotten a pretty good bit of it already. I will say that these books, we purchased them, and they're in the kit so I can read them, and I'm looking forward to reading them this way because it's kind of hard on my Kindle. But they are available as free PDFs right off the FAA.gov website. So I don't think you got to go out and spend the money on the books. If you just kind of want to get familiar with some of this aeronautical stuff, even before you start flying, or you just kind of have this curiosity of what I'm dealing with, go download the PDFs. I'll throw a few PDF links in the bottom of this video, and you can see what I'm going through.
All right, the next item here is, you'll see it says FARAIM. That's two more acronyms. FAR is Federal Aviation Regulations. AIM is the Aeronautical Information Manual. This is the 2020 edition. We're just coming up on the end of the year here, so they've already come out with next year's book of all the regulations that we have to follow as pilots.
There's a lot of small printing. I'm going to need my reading glasses on this one.
Don't feel too bad about it, Philip, because only about maybe a quarter of this stuff pertains to the private pilot. I
have a feeling this is one of those you don't read cover to cover, you read what you need to.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like I work with lawyers. They have their they look up special pieces according to what they need, and so
exactly
that's kind of like the same book.
So the major parts of there's 3 major sections of the regulations that we'll be primarily looking through. Obviously, this book contains glossaries, indexes, but the two big ones that we'll be looking at are FAR Part 61, which is what...
I've seen that referenced.
That's all of the steps that you need to take to become a pilot and pass the examinations. It's all laid out in here.
This thing is heavy. Holy moly.
And then Part 91, which is...
Heard that one referred to as well.
That is all the... Once you have the license, that's all the regulations that we need to abide by in order to operate aircraft safely. So we'll be talking about those in considerable detail and referencing this book as we go forward. But as Philip said, primarily when you go to this book, it's to look something up. Now the second part of it, the Aeronautical Information Manual, is a great resource. Tells you all kinds of things like how to read runway markings, how to interpret radio transmissions from air traffic control and other pilots. All the kind of information that you might need to know is in here. It's a little bit dense, and that's why the FAA publishes those other 3 books, because it's a little bit more readable.
Is this one available as a PDF off the FAA website as well?
That one actually on the FAA website is continuously updated. So you can go to, we'll put a link down in the description.
It is available though as a PDF?
Absolutely.
Did you send me this one?
I
don't think so.
Don't believe so.
It doesn't look familiar.
Right.
But I haven't had time to read them all. So.
And actually, put a link down in the description. There's a number of providers that collect and put that information together online with links. So I'll put...
just send me a link and we'll get it in the bottom of the video.
Some of my favorite resources to look through. Cornell Law School has a very good webpage detailing all of the federal aviation regulations. Really easy to use index, so I like to go to them for that. But again, it's right on the FAA website too, and if you want the most up-to-date version, that's where you go.
So far, all of this stuff looks like something that you could do on your own at no cost if you don't mind reading PDFs. They're a little harder to study with for some people, but it is available for you. It's easy to carry this around and reference it really fast. So. All
right, and the next thing we have in here is the first one that's not an FAA publication, and that's our Recreational Pilot Syllabus. You'll see on the front we have this branded with the Corbin Foundation, which is a group that's associated loosely with our EAA Corbin Chapter 93 here in Madison, but it is separate. It's a flying club, primarily based out here at Wanakee, but also has the friend of ours is involved in the Corbin Foundation. He has an airplane down at a grass strip south of Madison, which is where we'll be doing most of our flying.
Which is close to me. Here's a sample. It just kind of showed you what a lesson will be like. It's kind of one at a time.
Yep. So the syllabus will string together all of the other resources into what you need to read for each lesson.
Some of those will be referenced in here.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the next thing we have in here is these are your what we call sectional aeronautical charts. These are basically maps for pilots. We've got 2 of them here. They're divvied up by sections of the country, and each one is named after a city that falls somewhere within that map. So we have our Green Bay sectional, centered on Green Bay, Wisconsin. That covers the northern half of Wisconsin here. We also have our Chicago sectional, which of course is centered on Chicago, covers the southern half of Wisconsin and most of Illinois. So these will be what we'll use when we're doing cross-country flights, and these have all the information.
If you've never seen them, I've been looking at some of this stuff, and there's a lot of stuff on there, and it's like a lot of it's Greek to me. So I'm looking forward to this part, because I watched those girls at Girls in Aviation plotting a course, and they had similar maps out what they were doing, but there's lots of different terminology and drawings and circles and lines and numbers that all mean something to this guy, and to me they're just confusing. But I know this is one thing I'm really looking forward to learning, because I've always wondered what all that stuff meant. It always baffled me how you got all that stuff out of that map.
Yep, and so we'll go through all of that. When the time comes, you'll learn how to read these maps. Just
plot a course and figure it all out.
Yep. So next, we have actually one more FAA document here. This is the Recreational Pilot Practical Testing Standards. So the FAA is actually in the process of revising their publications that detail the testing standards that pilots have to comply with to pass all the required tests. The new format they call the Airman Certification Standards. It's a slightly larger book. It's much better cross-reference to all of the FAA informational handbooks, but they've started out with the private pilot. We may go for private pilot, but I put this recreational pilot one in here for now, so we'll be using this to begin with. If we decide to go full private later, we'll...
it's just a few extra things, flying at night and a little bit of instrument stuff, right?
Yep, that's it.
It's a very good chance we'll get to do that.
So if we can find an airplane that will allow us to do that flying that's required, we may progress to that point, but of course the chief doesn't have lights to fly at night, and a couple other requirements for the private pilot. So for now we've got the recreational pilot
that'll still be a lot of fun.
Testing standards. Finally, last book we got in here, this is the handbook for the Chief aircraft. Now the Chief, back when it was built in 1946, we didn't have pilots' handbooks quite the way we do nowadays. In fact, when they certified that airplane, they said, well, the instructions printed on the instrument panel should be enough for you to go fly it. That may have worked in 1946, doesn't work so well nowadays. Yeah. So this is actually an aftermarket book that's been prepared based on data for the Chief that we can go through and use in our flying and in our flight planning.
Has stuff like checklists, specs, the weights and things like that, what you're allowed to carry, how far it'll go, top speed, weight, center of gravity, all that kind of stuff that you need to know.
Absolutely. So with the Chief, obviously, this is an aftermarket book. You'd always want to, whenever you're using some of these aftermarket publications for the older aircraft, you always want to check that against the specifications that are listed in the FAA database for the aircraft. So at some point we'll show how you can verify that these resources that you get are actually accurate. But when you're flying old airplanes like this, sometimes some of the documentation just didn't exist back then. And next up, we're talking about charting a course with all these maps. So we have a couple things here to help us. We've got a plotter, which is basically just a ruler with some markings to help us determine distances.
Looks like a protractor built in there.
Basically, yeah. That's what we got, protractor and a ruler. So you can tell what direction your course is, and you can measure the mileage from one airport to the next.
It's kind of important, right?
The next thing we got here is our E6B flight computer. This is used for things like calculating ground speeds, calculating the effects of wind, all these things that we need to take into account when we do a cross-country flight. You'll learn all about how to use this. There's a manual included, but we'll go through it together at some point too.
They have a computer calculator that does this, but we don't get to go there yet. We got to do it the old school way, because I am a firm believer when you know how to do the foundation, you know how to do it the hard way, then when things go awry otherwise, you know where that knowledge came from, so you actually do learn it better. So I'm looking forward to learning all that stuff too. That's
absolutely. And here is your aviation headset. So when we're in the airplane, we have a little box intercom that allows us to talk to each other through the headsets in the airplane. Airplanes certainly back then didn't have a lot of sound insulation, so we wear the headsets.
What? No, these are very cool.
And these also allow us to talk on the radio to other pilots and even to air traffic control.
And I do have a setup where I'll be able to plug one of these into a splitter and be able to record our full cockpit voice recording. So we'll be hopefully have really good sound of everything that we say and interact in the cockpit in our the flight videos, which should be really, really neat.
And finally, last but certainly not least, we have
the flight log.
Pilot's flight log. So this is where we record all of your flight time. You keep track of all your flying in here. This is actually a legal document per the FAA. You are required to record at least the minimum number of flights to prove requirements for the license, and also to keep current to fly after you get your license. So,
hey, it even has my name on it. Look at that. Customized even. I'm big time now. Very cool. Looking forward to putting some numbers in this baby.
Absolutely. So there you have it, folks. There's the private pilot, recreational and private pilot flight kit. Right now, got it set up for the recreational pilot. Only things we have to switch out if we do decide to go private is the certification standards booklet, the syllabus, and that'll include some of the night flying. But up until then, it's pretty much all the same.
We don't have to worry about that till we get farther down the road.
Exactly,
so.
exactly.
All right, well, very cool. So, folks, there is the first step. Now I get to go memorize all this stuff. Not thoroughly. Just got to learn it enough to be fluent, understand it, understand the concepts and the science behind what happens, and I think we'll be good. It's going to be fun, be exciting. I'm hoping some of my RC experience will translate. I have a little knowledge of how flight works. It's not all voodoo magic, even though it looks like it. But I'm hoping that will help me a little bit along the way, plus some of the pre-reading I'm hoping speeds things up as well. So enjoy the journey. Don't forget, if you would like to help us, there's a link down there in the description area with all these books, but also a link to our GoFundMe campaign to help us raise the money. We're hoping to raise about $1,500 to $2,000 that will get us through with everything else we need and help us to get to this point of being a private pilot. But the best cool thing of all is you get to come along and be friends and ride along with us the whole way. So thanks, Jake.
Absolutely. Good to see you,
Looking forward to it. Now we just got to find the time to start the ground school in a place. I think we got that figured out. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Remember to subscribe.